Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. Tonight we have the honor and pleasure to have with us Ambassador Premjith Sivan, Ambassador to the Republic of Singapore. Ambassador Premjith, welcome.
Thank you, Excellency, for inviting me to join your Cambodia's Global Dialogue.
Yes, thank you. Well, Premjith, no title. You know, the reason I'm so happy that you could take the time to come to have a dialogue with us on, you know, ASEAN. I think the theme today is about ASEAN, and the timing it's so good that Cambodia next year will be chairing ASEAN. But before we get to dialogue, perhaps you know, you could say a bit about your background a bit.
I was appointed as Singapore's ambassador to the Kingdom of the Royal Kingdom of Cambodia in last August. So in a way, I'm celebrating my first year anniversary.
All right.
In Cambodia. My main role in Cambodia is to strengthen our long, traditionally close bilateral relationship between Cambodia and Singapore. So I have this very pleasant task to keep building bridges.
And that's what we're doing. We've been doing it for a whole year.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm very happy that that I've been appointed as Singapore's ambassador to Cambodia. Yes.
Speaking of anniversary, you know, let me congratulate on behalf of Cambodia, you know, Singapore 46th, you know, anniversary of independence. This must be you know, a very happy and proud moment for you as ambassador.
Yes, Siphana. This is our 46th Independence Day celebrations in Singapore. Ever since Singapore became independent in 1965, our whole premise was how to survive, because we have no resources.
Yes.
The only thing we have is human resources.
Yes.
So I think we have a very unique challenge in a sense that we have come quite a long way from our independence, but we do not think that we can take our survival or our economic development, the status of our economic development today for granted.
Yes, yes.
So we keep finding new paths, new ways of deepening our economic development as well as our regional integration in the region.
Yes. Well, I must say that Singapore is doing very well, you know, in terms of, you know, not just surviving, but you're thriving, and I think you are, you know, Singapore development model is one of the model of success. In the context of ASEAN, Singapore is a founding member of ASEAN, you know, and for Cambodia, we are the latest, the last, for that matter, the last member of ASEAN. And it's a big challenge for Cambodia next year to be the chair. How do you see, you know, the challenge of, number one, you know, ASEAN in itself, you know, as moving forward after we have the charter, in 4 years' time we're going to have the ASEAN Economic Community. What do you see the larger challenge for ASEAN as a whole first?
I think, Siphana, there are both internal as well as external challenge.
Yes.
Let me start with the external challenge first. The external challenge is that today, within the Asia region, we have China and India being the two biggest global economic engines in Asia. And ASEAN is sandwiched between these two huge, powerful engines. And so, if ASEAN does not ride on these two engines, then I'm afraid ASEAN is going to will not be in a position to catch up with these two giants. The second challenge is internal. Unless the 10 small countries within ASEAN come together, coalesce, and unite to achieve closer economic integration, then no one in the broader Asia-Pacific region is going to take you seriously.
Well, I mean, on the external side, we're talking about ASEAN is striving to have ASEAN centrality. You know, sort of like the hub and spoke a bit. You know, how do you see this effort to maintain that importance role of being central, you know, in the region? I must say it's not an easy task when you are dealing with two giants like India and China?
Both China, India, as well as other countries around the world, for example, the US,
Yes.
Even Europe,
Yes.
They are all part of ASEAN's dialogue partnership
Yes.
system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so ASEAN, the utility, the real utility of ASEAN is that it is open organization. It
Yes.
is one of the most unique regional groupings in the world that has got very deep and profound external links.
Yes.
Now, so long as ASEAN remains relevant
Yes. Yes.
to all these external powers, then I think ASEAN's potential and scope
Yes.
to play the role of a convener and facilitator
Indeed.
of not just economic, political, security, social, cultural developments in the region will remain relevant.
Yes. So you're optimistic of that, the strengthening of ASEAN centrality, if I can sort of summarize what you just said.
I'm optimistic, at the same time realistic.
You're realistic.
Realistic in the sense that I do recognize that there are unique features within ASEAN
Yes.
that we are still in the midst of trying to reconcile.
Yes.
I think there are many different stages of development amongst the ASEAN countries.
Yes.
And one of the key things that we really need to do is to narrow the development gap
I concur with you.
within ASEAN.
Yeah.
And if we don't narrow the development gap, then I think it is going to be very difficult for us to achieve economic integration.
Yes. I mean, that linked to the second point that you mentioned about, the internal challenge, which is the integration itself. And I see that the point that you raised about narrowing the development gap or reducing this development divide as very crucial in terms of bringing a certain coherence.
Yes.
Cambodia is an LDC, Laos, you have Myanmar. So in that sub-region, you see a lot of effort to try to catch up. I think we still take some time. And that's why I see next year, Cambodian Chair is such a psychologically important year for Cambodia.
Yes.
Because after 20 years of the peace process, we're in position now to say, okay, it's not going to be easy, but if we succeed in having a successful ASEAN chairmanship year, this should be the milestone of a sort of graduation, from being a post-crisis country to a normal country. What do you take on that one?
I fully agree with you. I think you are absolutely right, Siphana, in saying that next year is going to be a crucial year. There are two reasons. I believe there are two reasons for this. One, all the ASEAN countries, the leaders are committed to working towards ASEAN community in 2015.
Yes.
So when under Cambodia's chairmanship, all the leaders are going to take stock of where we are.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, of course, the whole integration process as well as building ASEAN community by 2015 is not going to be a smooth one. There will always be twists and turns.
Yes.
But I think ultimately the leaders are committed, which is why one of the most important features within ASEAN now, all the ASEAN leaders meet twice a year.
Yes.
It used to be that all of them only meet once a year.
Once a year, yes. In April and in November.
In
right?
November.
Yes, yes.
So the fact that the ASEAN leaders are giving very close attention
Yes.
to this whole process of cohesiveness, integrating ASEAN, to me sends a very strong signal.
Yes, yes.
Not only to the region but also to the wider world, that we are committed to this vision of fully integrated ASEAN community. Having said that, I do at the same time would like to highlight that there are different political systems.
Okay.
There are, as we earlier discussed, that there are different stages of development of each of the countries. So integration is going to take time.
Yes.
But because all ASEAN leaders feel that this is the only way forward, and there is a collective consensus on the direction that we are all supposed to be headed, then I think all of us will have to make sure that the internal constraints within our own countries are alleviated and we all work towards an ASEAN community.
Yes.
The whole ASEAN community is 600 million people.
Yes.
The world population is 6 billion. Today, ASEAN is a $1.6 trillion economy.
Wow.
if you come together, ASEAN can easily become one of the global engines of growth.
Yes.
At first we aim to become a regional engine of growth. In my view, Siphana, there are 4 poles in Asia. You got China being the first pole, India being the second pole, Japan being the third pole, and I would like to see ASEAN emerging as the fourth pole.
Fourth pole.
Yeah, and once you have all the 4 poles growing very rapidly, you are going to have a very powerful engine.
And that's why, to me, I think economic integration is so important. You know, I mean, you have ASEAN, of course, then you have the GMS, which is sort of like overlapping a bit, but I see, for me, to be fair to many of this government in ASEAN and also the GMS, you know, minister, they're working very hard on the physical infrastructure, the connectivity, right?
Yes.
But I find that the challenge is more on the soft infrastructure, because it's easy to build a road with the same standard and everything, but you mentioned the difficulty of getting the ratification of the various treaty and convention, not because of a bad or intent or not wanting to implement, but it's just the complexity of the legal system, the procedure, the internal procedure of different government require that it takes so long to get all this procedure adopted. So to me, I think moving toward the initiative that can sort of like facilitate the flow of good and service, it's important for to narrow the development gap, right? What other challenge you see, you know, particularly for a smaller country to really benefit from this ASEAN economic integration? Of course, you mentioned, you know, the sort of like the asymmetry of power as well. But within ASEAN, we also have that certain asymmetry, and thanks to this arrangement where the ASEAN elder brother is reaching out to help build the capacity, that sort of thing. Singapore is doing quite an awesome job, you know, in terms of helping Cambodia build the capacity. You have a big Singapore-Cambodia training center. I don't know, you probably trained thousands of government officials already by now, no?
We started this initiative called Initiative for Integration, ASEAN Regional Integration.
Yes.
As part of that initiative, we have established training centers in Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia and Myanmar.
Yes.
In Cambodia, we have so far trained 4,000 Cambodian government officials in the training center in Phnom Penh, and another 4,000 Cambodian government officials have gone to Singapore.
4,000?
4,000.
My God.
To Singapore under our Singapore Cooperation Training Program. I mean, Singapore is committed to building up capacity within the region, and this whole program, this training program we have, focuses on the government.
Yes.
Because I think we have to start somewhere.
Yes, you got to start somewhere. Yeah.
So building up governance capabilities and so on. And I think it's also important that all the ASEAN countries, particularly the founding members, they also want to share their development experiences, because they all have gone through a different development path, and ultimately each country must choose their own development path that fits their own unique circumstances. And of course play to your strength.
Of course, of course. But you do need the fundamental bedrock, which is development of the human resources.
Yes.
So in that sense, perhaps I'm quite new in you know, assisting the government in the ASEAN preparation, but I do see the level of capacity of government official in the area of ASEAN, of regional policy, that sort of thing. They're quite strong, and perhaps a large part has been due to the effort of Singapore as well. So we have to say thank you to Singapore for that effort.
I think both Cambodia and Singapore, we have been working very closely, particularly in the area of economic development as well as at the regional level. One initiative earlier that you mentioned, Siphana, is the ASEAN Connectivity.
ASEAN Connectivity,
I think ASEAN Connectivity, you have road connectivity, you have rail connectivity, you have air connectivity, and you have sea connectivity. I think Cambodia 2 weeks ago during that Asia Economic Forum.
Yes,
remember
indeed,
that,
we happened to be in the same panel.
DPM, Deputy Prime Minister Ketchon,
yes,
in his keynote speech said that Cambodia is attaching the highest priority to the missing rail link
yes,
between Cambodia and Vietnam.
Yes, yes, indeed.
I think it's 257 kilometers. Now, this whole missing link, once it is built, it is actually part of a Singapore Kunming.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
Singapore Kunming is more than 500 over kilometers.
Yes, yes.
Now imagine today, without that linkage, we are going through so many other alternative modes of transport.
Yes, exactly.
But once that is built,
yes,
the economic competitiveness of the region is going to be much more enhanced,
indeed.
Because transporting cargo by rail, it's significantly cheaper than many other alternative modes of transport. So I think once you get this whole ASEAN connectivity going, of course there will be budgetary constraints, funding constraints, and as you said, software constraints. Getting the right legislation, getting the right frameworks, bringing the various governments together in a coordinated framework, coherent framework. All this is going to take time. But once it is done, imagine the kind of economic opportunities that will come up. That entire Singapore Kunming 500 over kilometers.
And Cambodia will link to
Cambodia will be linked to this economic grid.
Yes, exactly.
And in that economic grid is going to lead to many more opportunities along that entire corridor.
So to me, I see the theme of Cambodia Chair will be ASEAN, one community, one destiny.
Yes.
It's quite interesting. I have to say, whoever come up with that thing, which is right. All this connectivity is linked to one thing. Is linking the destiny of the region together. And like you said, that yes, we like to see the four pole of growth, of strength, but unless we are connected within ourselves, how can we connect to the next pole? Right?
Yes.
And to me, I see also that within ASEAN, there are different sub-poles also. No different than GMS have their own sub-pole, but Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia have their own sub-pole. But the trick is how do you get all this connectivity in place? And I think the effort that the ASEAN, the blueprint, the three-pillar blueprint is so important, to set a roadmap for all of us. I think next year, one of the tasks will be how do Cambodia take on what the current chair, which is Indonesia, have started. How can we build upon that, and then try to come up with something that will reflect, number one, the leadership of Cambodia, but the maturity of this society, of this government, in part due, like you say, to many of the effort of the ASEAN elder, older, member to founding member to help us. But that's something that we're quite excited about it. So what's you on the challenge of the youth, for example? Because I think for country like Cambodia, I don't know about Singapore, but you have less population, right? So the pressure on creating employment is very different. But for us, we're talking about 600-700, young Cambodian entering the marketplace. Capacity building is very important, but the ability to migrate also within the region. What do you see this ASEAN economic community opening in terms of opportunity for young Cambodian to go to other country?
I think
in the region, of course.
I think the first step is to make sure that we are all connected.
Yes.
Right. I think this whole idea of labor migration is still being discussed amongst the various ASEAN member states. I think once we achieve ASEAN connectivity and so on, and this is something that will naturally develop.
Yes, exactly.
And I think we should not put the cart before the horse.
Exactly, exactly.
Most importantly, build all the various connections, the physical infrastructure, and through that, for example, tourism is going to come up.
Indeed.
That's going to boom because today, if we want to travel to one another countries, we will have to use only air.
Exactly.
Right? But once you have the roads from
Yes.
Singapore all the way connecting to Kunming,
Yes.
you find that many more people, students will be able to travel.
No visa.
No visa. Yeah. So I think again visas and all that is also another important issue.
Yes.
Because ultimately we also want many more Cambodians traveling around the region. We also want to see Singaporeans traveling around the region.
Exactly.
And that is the only way we are going to build deeper understanding.
This people-to-people connectivity, which is also the soft side. I'm saying the soft side. You know.
I mean, all these road, rail, sea, air connectivity means nothing if ultimately if it doesn't benefit the people.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, ultimately,
so you have infrastructure connectivity. You have the sort of like the software connectivity. You know. Then you have the people connectivity. All these are quite. So like exciting from the psychological perspective, but I see also the sense that of this one community that we're not anymore Cambodian. Yes, we're Cambodian, but we're ASEAN. And the 2 weeks ago when we have the flag hoisting of ASEAN, this is a proud moment for ASEAN. This is a proud moment for Cambodia. And you know, so this is something I think will change the paradigm thinking of Cambodia also, that we're not anymore an isolated country, post-crisis, suffering, struggling on our own. Now we're proudly a member of the ASEAN community.
It is a kind of a coming of age.
Yes.
I mean, I think the flag hoisting that you just mentioned, it's an important milestone.
Yes.
One, it shows that we are no longer just Cambodian or Singapore citizens.
Yes.
We are ASEAN citizens.
Yes, exactly. How old is ASEAN?
44 years old.
44 years.
Yes.
I mean, midlife already.
But imagine, okay, I mean, maybe at the age of 44, but I think it's also important to understand the constraints. The first 20 years was not easy for us.
Exactly. Well, like young adulthood, you know.
Yes.
Our first 20 years was rocky.
So it was a very turbulent
Yes.
period for us. It was only in the 1990s, if you recall, that we started looking into economic integration through the establishment of the Common Effective Preferential Tariff.
Yes.
Then over time, FTA started developing and so on. Then that whole economic integration took a backseat because of the Asian financial crisis in 1997. Then we again recovered, made some reforms within our own respective economies, and today we are back on track. Unfortunately, we are seeing global headwinds. Again. So I think it's, even when we go through an economic downturn like this, and this economic downturn is likely to be much longer than other downturns, because for the first time in many decades or even in history, you see two global economic engines going through engine trouble. The US is going through their own difficulties. The European Union, several of the members of the European Union are also going to go, are currently going through difficulties. But Asia as a whole, many people say that yes, Asia can still look towards a very bright future. But I think it's important to remember that Asia as a whole is integrated and connected to the rest of the world. So the effects of the slowdown of the US and Europe, we are not immune to them.
We're not immune.
So I think it's important to remember
and
that.
that's why, Premjith, the point is that we are so connected now in the world that, you know, we have to matter, we have to influence, we have to contribute, we have to care, and we have to follow what's happening in the world because it will have a direct impact. And that's why I see also ASEAN being invited, you know, to be part of the G20, for example, is such a big opportunity for us to follow, to influence, to share our wishes, to share our concern, but also to influence and to assert our role in the global scene as well. So I think this is something that I think is quite proud for our government, our Prime Minister, that next year we will have the opportunity to be invited as chair of ASEAN to, you know, make a statement on behalf of the community to the global community of G20. So that's something we look forward for that. And like I say, we have come to a certain age where you have to assert, you know, the certain maturity and next year is such a moment, you know. Yeah. So, but anyway, Premjith, unfortunately, 30 minutes is always too short. We just started the conversation. We haven't cracked any good joke, yeah, and then we finish already. So let me just say on behalf of the station, the program, and perhaps also on behalf of the Royal Government of Cambodia, if I could, you know, to humbly say thank you to you personally, to your government foremost for being so helpful all this year to help Cambodia build its capacity. And you should be as proud as us when you see next year that Cambodia will be performing its role, its duty as an ASEAN citizen, but having the honor to chair. So I want to say thank you personally also, yes.
I would also, I mean, I think I also would like to say thank you to you, I mean, for inviting me to this Cambodia Global Dialogue. Next year is going to be a very important year for Cambodia and for all ASEAN countries.
Yes.
And Singapore looks forward to working with Cambodia to ensure the success of our collective effort and achieving our common goal of ASEAN community in 2015.
Thank you, Ambassador. Well, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a little taste of you know, ASEAN, particularly for next year when Cambodia chair the ASEAN. But you got a good background, and I look forward in the next several months to have the opportunity to go a little bit deeper on more thematic issues relating to ASEAN community building, the role of Cambodia in different sectors. And I look forward to have more of this discussion. And I hope you can learn and hopefully you can apply into your work. But there's one thing that I definitely would want to speak next time to other speaker is more the role of the private sector in the ASEAN community building. But that will be the topic of a future event. So once again, Premjith, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.